Okay, hello. I'd like to welcome you to All Israel News. We have a very special interview today with Scott Phillips, the Executive Director of Passages. And hi, Scott.
It's
Good
good
to
to
see
see
you.
you again, Nicole.
Good to see you too. So you were just in Israel last week.
We were just in Israel last week. We just got back a little over a week ago. It was amazing after being gone for myself 18 months and Passages 15 months. It was amazing to be back.
Well, welcome back. You're one of the first foreigners, visitors that we're welcoming back. So that's great. But in any case, now we're speaking overseas. And so I would like to ask you, there's two major topics I want to cover, but I want to, first I want to ask you about the return to Israel of not of all tourists, but specifically of Passages. But first, can you tell us a little bit about your organization? Like, what is Passages, and even why the name Passages?
That's a great question, Nicole. Yeah, Passages is, we were founded in 2016 officially, and we've taken over 8,000 young Christian college students on trips to Israel during that time. We would have hit 10,000 by now, but, COVID had other thoughts. Passages is an organization that really seeks to connect and help students to, Christian college students, the next generation of Christian leaders in the United States, to discover the roots of their faith, number one, in the place where their faith was born. There's this sort of spiritual rite of passage. So the name Passages, it's a rite of passage. It should be a rite of passage for all Christians to be able to go to the place where their faith was born, where their spiritual heritage exists, their spiritual lineage exists. And to discover the roots of your faith, what it does is it helps you understand the Bible and the story of the Bible from beginning to end. It puts it in context, and it provides a deep foundation for life, godliness, leadership, all of these things going forward. And so we think that is our unique contribution in the faith space, is that we help students to discover the roots of their faith. And number two, we want students to encounter Israel. We want them to meet the people of Israel today. We want them to go to the places of modern Israel. We want them, to connect with those who live in Israel. Obviously, Israel as the Jewish state, there is a profound connection between Christians and Jews that's so important. And it's such a unique connection in that, going back to the roots conversation, as Christians, our roots are in the Jewish heritage. Obviously, much of the book that we read, the Bible, was written by Jews, and in the New Testament was also written by Jews. Jesus was Jewish, and so there's really there's that unique connection there with modern Israel, and also just to see the ingenuity, the beauty, the challenges, the complexity, but also just the modern miracle that Israel is today. And so we want to connect the next generation of Christian college students with Israel, and then tell your story. That's the third part of our tagline: discover your roots, encounter Israel, tell your story. We want to equip the next generation of leaders to take their experience that they had in Israel and tell their communities about it, and then lead that throughout their careers, throughout their callings. And so that's why we have the Passages Leaders Network. The trip is just a catalyst. It's a means to an end, not an in and of itself. So the Passages Leaders Network is where we really engage alumni, hopefully for their full lives. It's a new program, but we want to be involved. We want to help them get jobs. We want to help them get internships, opportunities, and keep them connected, because the connections made in Israel are strong. And if they can connect with thousands of other students who've done it, it's going to be really important.
Well, it's amazing. That's it's very important that follow up, and you're not just bringing them on a trip, but they're investing in them. You're investing in them to continue.
Sure.
And to continue learning and also to be ambassadors. That's great. I remember when we spoke before, you also mentioned that they also meet Arabs, Israeli Arabs, and
That's right.
Palestinians. And so, especially for this generation, it's very important because it's not just not only Israel, but I feel like this generation also wants to know all sides. And okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important to us as well. And it's one of the things that we like to, talk to our students about is that, it's okay to support the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, a place where the Jewish people can live and determine their destiny and defend themselves. It's also okay to support, Palestinians who just want to live their lives. They want to send their kids to school. They want to live in safety. They want to feed their children. They want to live lives. And I think a new generation of those who do support Israel, it's a very, it's not sort of this black and white issue. You can also, really lean into God's heart for the Palestinians, Arabs, those who live in the land as well. So that is something that we do. They hear from Palestinian Christians, they hear from Palestinian Muslims, they hear from Israeli Arabs, and hear the different parts of this complex picture that is modern Israel, for sure.
That's so important. That's really good to hear. Okay, so anyway, so now you guys are able to come back, it's 15 months, you said, since the last trip. And I understand, though, as we're covering here at All Israel News Tourism, most of our readers want to come back, and so they're very interested in the tourism aspect. So you're one of the few that has been back, but Israel has very stringent policies for getting here, and one of them includes having been vaccinated. By only specific vaccines are valid according to Israel's regulations. So I imagine that might be a problem. I understand that in America, not everybody's vaccinated, not everybody wants to be vaccinated. So right. How has that affected you?
Yeah, it's a great question. We just did, as you mentioned, our very first trip back to Israel in 15 months. We've been always, our nose has been at the door, waiting for the door just creak open a little bit. And we always would joke and say that when it would open just a little bit, we're going to fall in. And so that's what our team's been committed to for the last 15 months, since we had to evacuate 200 students 3 days early in spring of 2020. And so, we were approved for a very small group right after the war, right after the operation, rockets, all of that happening. We were approved for a small group to just get in and start doing trips again. We brought some alumni with us, some of our staff and other partners at the Philos Project with us on that pilot trip. But we have, hopefully, if we get approval, we have another 30 students leaving in less than a week to go back to Israel on a second pilot. And then hopefully, we'll wait and see. Obviously, the goalpost moves a lot of times with the full reopening of Israel. But we're prepared to send another 500 students in July and August this year. And so okay. as you mentioned, obviously there are challenges to that. One, to get in the country, and part of getting in the country is the requirement for vaccinations. A good number of our students said, no problem, fine. Either I'm already vaccinated or I'm willing to do it so I can go to Israel, or maybe their school is pressuring them to do it, their university or something like that. But then there are definitely students out there who don't feel that they should get the vaccine. And so that is the challenge right now, right? And we don't know when Israel will lift it. It could be a long time, maybe not, who knows? Like your guess is as good as mine. Right. But as of now and in the foreseeable future, that is the requirement. Israel is concerned about variants entering the country. But it is a challenge.
Okay. All right. Well, so you still have how many students for, you said for July?
Yeah. So in July and August, we've got 500 students that are signed up. They're registering right now. And we're just sort of waiting to see if Israel fully opens, or if they make some sort of mechanism for us to get these students in the country. It's time to get back.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's not definite, but the students are waiting, but the approval hasn't been granted.
That's correct. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see. Okay. Well, we've been also covering here. There have been a few polls lately about support for Israel among young evangelicals. And the latest poll, which we'll be writing about this week as well, is that support for Israel among young evangelicals has dropped from 69% in 2018 to 33% now. That's a remarkable drop. And first of all, do you have any insight into why that is? And it seems like your organization is uniquely equipped to deal with something like this.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Nicole. It is an alarming poll, because support for Israel is support for the Jewish people to have a homeland, to be able to, as I said earlier, to defend themselves, determine their destiny, and be safe in their own homeland. And so that is, that's part of what we do here, as I mentioned, in the Encounter Israel part of
Mhm.
our mission. And it's important that students come see the country for themselves. It's important that they understand the spiritual power of Israel, and also, what's happening in Israel today. It's important that they meet the people for themselves, versus just hearing something in the media or hearing something on campus, or maybe seeing something on a social media infographic and taking it as the full truth and nothing but the truth. It's important that they see it for themselves. And that's what we're committed to do, is show them Israel.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's see these numbers go up in the next few years.
That's our hope.
I have a follow-up question to before. I wanted to know, who are your students? Like, where do you know, are they from? Where are they from?
Our students are from all over the place in the United States. So we work with, secular sort of non-Christian universities, a lot of student ministries on campus. We work with Christian universities directly, sometimes, a lot of times with the administrations or professors. They do the recruiting. We also have an African American leadership initiative where we partner with the Philos Project on that. And the Philos Project is our partner organization. And they do a lot of work in African American leadership, Hispanic leadership areas. And so we work with them to recruit African American, Hispanic students from HBCUs, from traditionally Black denominations, from Hispanic communities, churches, all of that. So we also have an initiative called Passages for Catholics. And it's a really important initiative here at Passages for Catholics to also strengthen their Catholic faith and for them to see Israel as well. And so we have a lot of different avenues of recruitment and students from various backgrounds. And one thing about support for Israel is actually there is still quite a few students, people that would identify themselves as neutral when it comes to the way they view Israel. And we view that as it's an opportunity for us to help for Israel to tell its story, and for these students to connect to the roots of their faith, so that they can have sort of this appreciation of the Holy Land of Israel. So that's important for us.
Wow, that's great. I mean, it's great for them to, even being neutral, doesn't matter. Just come, have the experience, get to know the people. There's so much diversity here. I've lived here for 20 years and I'm still learning. I'm still meeting new people groups, and it's fascinating. So that's great. Well, do you have anything that you'd like to add that I didn't ask?
Well, I think that, as we mentioned earlier, Passages is coming back to Israel. I mentioned 500 students this summer, but we want to have 1,000 students in the country by the end of this year. And then we want to have 3,000 students between now and next summer. And so we're ready to get back to what we do, is introduce students to the roots of their faith, introduce them to modern Israel, and the land that we love so much, and the land that we know that they'll love so much, when they go. And that's important for us to just get the word out that we're coming back as soon as we're already coming back. I will mention one more thing. We do have we have actually 8-week long-term program going on in Israel right now. We've got 36 students that are in Israel right now. It's a partnership with Hebrew University, and they're there for 8 weeks on this long-term program on student visas. They landed just a week ago. And so they're exploring Israel and learning a lot about, the tenets of our mission and what we do at Passages, and just really getting even further connected to Israel. So we've got those long-term participants in the country now, another 30 students coming up soon, hopefully another 500 this summer, and 3,000 by this time next year. That's what we're aiming for.
Let's hope that the pandemic agrees to this, because let's see the gates open again. That would be great. That would be fantastic. And I hope to meet your groups when they come.
Absolutely, anytime.
Great. So Scott, how can people learn more about Passages?
Yeah, absolutely. They go to passagesisrael.org. You could get in there. You can learn more about our organization. If you know of a student that would be interested, a Christian college student in the United States to be interested, there's a place there for them to sign up for an interest list. If you'd like to support Passages, of course, you can do that as well on our website. We always need partners to be able to continue this mission forward.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. I encourage our listeners and our viewers to look up Passages and to read more about it. We're going to stay in touch, and we're also going to keep everybody up to date on the tourism situation. And let's hope that you reach your goal and then some.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you very much.